Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something right now. When folks ask, why is America afraid of India? Oh, that question right there, that's a whole show by itself. That's a whole evening's worth of conversation, because the answer ain't one thing. It ain't a single, neat little sentence you can tuck in your pocket. No, sir, it's layers on layers, like your grandma's special Sunday lasagna. Every time you cut deeper, you find another flavor. And by the end, you sitting there staring at the plate like, now hold on, what exactly did I just eat? Because that's what's happening with America trying to understand India. It's confusion sprinkled with admiration, wrapped in a little bit of panic, finished with a big all bowl of we better pay attention. Now I ain't here to talk fear like spooky ghosts and monsters under the bed. I ain't talking about that fear you get when you hear a noise in the kitchen at midnight and you know ain't nobody else home but you. I'm talking about a different kind of fear. The fear you get when you realize somebody else might just be catching up to you. When somebody else might be working harder, thinking faster, dreaming bigger, pushing boundaries, and doing it with confidence in their walk. You ever seen somebody walk in a room like they already own it? That's the vibe. And if you don't feel prepared for that kind of energy, oh yeah, it'll shake you up a little bit. Let's be honest, America has been sitting at the top of the world stage for a long time. Big boots, big spotlight, big microphone. Everybody watching, everybody listening. And when you're used to being the one everybody else is watching, you don't quite know how to act when someone else starts stepping up. It's like when you're at a family reunion talent show and you've been the star of the show for 15 years. You come out, you do your usual moves, and the aunties clap like they always do. But then suddenly your little cousin, who used to be running around in diapers, walks up and starts singing like an angel straight from heaven, and the whole room goes quiet. Then the room goes wild. And now you sitting there like, wait a minute, who taught him that? When did that happen? I need to rehearse more. That's America when it looks at India right now, because here's the truth. India is no longer the country people used to talk about only in terms of poverty or struggle, or some documentary on late-night television. Oh no, that image is over. India stepped out of that storyline and started writing a blockbuster. New chapter, new characters, new energy, and everybody's paying attention, whether they admit it or not. Look around and see what's happening. Tech, India's fingerprints everywhere, medicine, half the doctors in your hospital probably got someone in their family with a degree from India. Space, India said, let's go to the moon, but let's do it on a budget. And they did it. The moment that happened, you could hear the whole world go, wait, what? And then you got the economy rising like bread in an oven set a little too high. Businesses booming, middle class expanding, young people hustling non-stop. Innovation popping off like fireworks on New Year's Eve. So let me break it down the way folks can understand it. America isn't afraid of India like it's a threat. No. It's more like America is nervous because India is becoming that kid in school who used to sit in the back quietly, doing all their homework, minding their business, and then suddenly becomes valedictorian, captain of the debate team, and wins 3 science fairs in a row. Next thing you know, people start whispering, hey, did y'all see what they're doing? And the fear isn't hostility. It's respect mixed with a little we need to do better. But let me get into the real reasons. See, India ain't playing around with education. Oh no, every Indian family treats education like the rest of the world treats oxygen. It's not optional, it's the dated. Kids over there doing calculus before some folks here know how to spell calculus. Children growing up speaking 2, 3 languages like it's nothing. They walk into rooms worldwide speaking English better than half the native speakers. And that right there, that's a superpower. America sees that. And it knows that kind of discipline and determination builds a generation that won't be satisfied with second place. That's nerve wracking when you're used to being first. Then you got the tech industry. Let me tell you something. India is everywhere in tech. If Silicon Valley were a car, India would be the engine. You look behind the most successful tech companies in the world, and you'll find Indians running departments, leading teams, driving innovation. Some of the biggest CEO on the planet, India. Some of the sharpest engineers, India. Programmers, India. Data scientists, India. And they're not just filling jobs, they're creating them. They're building companies. They're imagining futures before others even finish figuring out the present. You know what that does to America? It shakes it. Because America used to be the place where all the brightest minds gathered. Now the brightest minds are rising from everywhere, including a place with over 1 billion people who are hungry, ambitious, and laser-focused. And don't get me started on the population. When you have that many people, young, energetic, educated, that's not a country, that's momentum. America sees that and goes, hold on. If that many people start moving in the same direction, we're gonna feel that wave. Because influence is no longer just about military size or land mass. Influence today is about numbers, knowledge, innovation, and the power to shift global markets. And India has all four growing like they got miracle. Grow sprinkled on them daily. Then there's culture. Oh, America loves Indian culture, loves it. But let me tell you something. When a culture is that strong, that colorful, that deep, it becomes global whether you want it or not. Yoga took over the world. Bollywood, people who don't understand a word still dancing to the rhythm. Food, let me tell you something. If your city doesn't have at least one Indian restaurant, move. Something is wrong with that place. The culture is magnetic, and America knows cultural power is real power. The more the world embraces a culture, the more influence that nation gains. But there's another thing America sees, India's confidence. And confidence, when it grows, is something the world cannot ignore. India is walking into boardrooms, summits, global stages saying, we're here, we're ready, and we're bringing our own way of doing things. They're not trying to copy anybody anymore. They're not trying to fit in. They're showing up with pride, and let me tell you, when a nation starts believing deeply in its identity, that's when it becomes unstoppable. But let's talk straight. The U.S. isn't afraid because India is aggressive or hostile. No, that's not the kind of fear we're talking about. It's the fear of competition, the fear of potential, the fear you feel when someone else's rise forces you to reflect on your own choices. America has been sitting comfortably for so long that seeing another nation rise this fast, this strong, makes it question, are we doing enough? Are we keeping up? Are we innovating at the speed we used to? Fear has a way of making you evaluate yourself. Look at the space race. America been landing on moons and building space stations. Then here comes India, under budget, under time, and successful. That's like being the heavyweight champ and watching a newcomer knock out opponents with style. It makes you reassess your training routine. Now let me say this. America and India are not enemies, not at all. They're partners, allies, collaborators. They're both democracies with vibrant people, strong ambitions, and shared values. But even allies can make each other nervous when one starts climbing the ladder faster than expected. You ever had a friend who suddenly got in shape, got a promotion, bought a new car, and now you're just looking at yourself like, I need to step it up? Exactly, that's the energy. America admires India, but admiration can come with a little nervousness. India is unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a we didn't expect y'all to do that so quickly kind of way. Every time someone counts India out, India comes back bigger, stronger, louder, more prepared, and America is noticing that pattern. Then you got the geopolitical game. Now this ain't chess, this is like chess inside a tornado. Big powers watching each other, checking each other, forming alliances, keeping balance. And in that storm, India is one of the only countries that doesn't crumble under pressure. India says, we'll talk to you, we'll talk to them, we'll talk to everybody. Because we're India, we got our own interests, our own strategy, our own voice. A country that can stand tall without leaning too hard on one side. Oh, that's rare, and rare things make powerful nations nervous. America sees India building relationships with the Middle East, Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, everywhere, building trade routes, energy deals, defense partnerships. America sees India growing influence in global organizations, and that's when the thought creeps in, India is not just rising, it's positioning itself. And positioning is everything. Now here's one more reason, resilience. America is used to countries that depend on it. Countries that need aid, need support, need guidance, but India doesn't crumble easy. You push India down, it bounces up like a basketball with too much air in it. You tell India it can't do something, it'll show up next week having already done it twice. That kind of spirit makes America go, we need to keep an eye on them. They're not folding. And there's something else. Diversity. India is the most diverse place on earth. Languages, religions, cultures, lifestyles, philosophies, and somehow they make it all work. If America tried to manage that much diversity, the whole government would resign by Tuesday. But India handles it, argues about it, laughs about it, votes about it, debates about it, and somehow keeps moving forward. That's power. Let me tell you what fear really is in this context. It's recognizing potential. When you see a country with brain power, manpower, cultural power, economic power, and spiritual power all rising together, you don't run from that. You respect it. But with respect comes caution, and America is cautious because it knows the world is changing. The seats at the global table are rearranging, and India is moving its chair closer to the head. But here's the truth nobody says loud enough. America's fear isn't really fear of India, it's fear of being outpaced. It's fear of falling behind. It's fear of not evolving fast enough. India is a mirror showing America what can be achieved with determination, discipline, education, and unity of purpose. And that mirror can be uncomfortable. But let me flip this. America isn't just afraid, America is impressed, deeply impressed, because you can fear something and still respect it. You can fear something and still admire it. The two don't cancel each other out. America sees India as a rising leader, a partner, a powerhouse, and yes, someone who might one day be equal on the global stage in every way. And that's not a bad thing. That's a sign of a world becoming more balanced, more competitive, more collaborative. America benefits from India's rise. India benefits from America's experience. Together they can challenge bigger threats, bigger issues, bigger goals. So why is America afraid of India? Because India is the future, because India is showing the world that power doesn't come from being loud, but from being consistent. It doesn't come from bragging, but from building. It doesn't come from being the strongest today, but from preparing to be stronger tomorrow. America is afraid because India is young, because India is smart, because India is ambitious, because India is becoming a force that can't be ignored, because India is proving that destiny is not inherited, it's earned. But let me end with this. Fear ain't always a bad thing. Sometimes fear wakes you up. Sometimes it's inspiration. Sometimes it's respect wearing a different hat. And in this case, America's fear is really an acknowledgement. An acknowledgement that India is stepping into greatness, that India is rising, that India is claiming its place, And let me tell you, when a nation rises with discipline, brilliance, culture, unity, and vision, oh, the world better get ready, because India is not coming quietly. India is coming proudly, and America knows it. India's space and scientific achievements surpass expectations and unsettle competitors in ways that are reshaping how the world understands capability, ambition, and national potential. The surprising element is not that India is succeeding in space or science. The surprising element is how fast, how efficiently, and how consistently these successes are appearing. For decades, many global powers assumed India would remain on the periphery of high-end scientific development, bound by economic constraints or bureaucratic challenges. Instead, India is repeatedly proving that innovation is not a privilege of wealthy nations. It is a product of vision, discipline, and determination. Every breakthrough forces competitors to adjust their assumptions, reevaluate their strategies, and reconsider their place in the global technological race. The disruptive force of India's achievements begins with the Indian Space Research Organization, an agency that has transformed itself from launching simple satellites into becoming a pioneer in cost-effective, high-precision space engineering. The world took notice when India pulled off the Mars orbiter mission on a budget smaller than the cost of a Hollywood movie. That moment was not just a scientific milestone. It was a psychological jolt to global competitors who had long believed that space exploration required astronomical budgets. India showed that intelligence, creativity, and resourcefulness could achieve the same results at a fraction of the cost. Suddenly, the narrative that only 2 or 3 nations could dominate space collapsed. India stepped into that arena with confidence, and it became impossible for competitors to ignore. Then came Chandrayaan-2 and Chandrayaan-3. Even though Chandrayaan-2 had challenges in the final landing, the orbiter turned out to be a long-lasting scientific asset, and Chandrayaan-3's soft landing near the lunar South Pole was a demonstration of resilience that rivals respect but also fear. The South Pole is one of the most difficult lunar locations to reach, and India did it before countries with far bigger space budgets. What unsettles competitors is not just that India succeeded, it's that India succeeded with ingenuity and persistence, without bowing to setbacks. Nations that treat failure as a final verdict were forced to confront the reality that India treats failure as a stepping stone. A competitor who refuses to give up is the most unpredictable opponent in any race. Beyond lunar missions, India is emerging as a crucial player in satellite technology, navigation systems, space-based communication, and remote sensing. The country's independent navigation system, NavIC, signals that India does not want to rely on foreign GPS infrastructure. Building a national navigation constellation is something only a handful of countries have managed, and India's entry into that group signals a growing technological independence. When a nation can navigate, communicate, and monitor its environment without external support, it increases its strategic autonomy. Competitor nations notice that shift. They understand that the more independent India becomes in space, the less influence others can exert over it. India's scientific achievements also extend into global collaboration, launching satellites for dozens of countries. When developing nations choose India as their launch provider, they are not just choosing cost savings, they are choosing reliability. That choice subtly shifts international dependencies. Nations that once relied solely on U.S., Russian, or European launch vehicles now turn to India as a trusted alternative. This shift dilutes the dominance of traditional space powers. Competitors who previously enjoyed monopolies on launch services now face a challenger who offers equal performance at a significantly lower price. The unsettling part for them is that India's success erodes the economic foundations that once secured their influence. Even more disruptive is India's plan for human spaceflight. The Gaganyaan mission represents a bold declaration that India intends to enter the League of Nations capable of sending humans into space. This step is not symbolic, it is strategic. Human spaceflight requires mastery over life, support systems, crew capsules, re-entry technologies, and precise control. When India achieves this, it will signal to the world that India is not merely participating in space exploration, it is mastering it. Competitors understand that human spaceflight demands an immense technological ecosystem. So when India prepares for it, they see an entire nation gearing up to leap forward across dozens of scientific domains at once. That multidimensional growth is what makes them uneasy. India's science ecosystem extends beyond rockets and satellites. The country is making serious strides in quantum computing, biotechnology, medicine, agricultural science, nuclear research, materials science, renewable energy, and artificial intelligence. These areas are not isolated silos. They converge to build a powerful national innovation engine. Competitor nations are unsettled because India is rising across multiple scientific fields simultaneously. It is not a one-industry success story. It is not a narrow specialization. It is a comprehensive, structured expansion of scientific capability. Quantum technology, for instance, is becoming a new battleground for global influence. India's National Quantum Initiative is pushing the country into the elite circle of nations, pursuing quantum communication networks and quantum processors. Quantum supremacy will eventually determine which nations dominate secure communication, banking, cybersecurity, and military systems. India investing heavily in this field is a message competitors cannot afford to ignore. A nation with a billion-plus population and a strong mathematics tradition stepping into quantum research raises the stakes for everyone else. Biotechnology is another area where India's progress is forcing a re-evaluation of global scientific assumptions. During the pandemic, India produced its own vaccines, ramped up massive manufacturing capacity, and supplied countries around the world. Nations accustomed to being primary suppliers watched India transform into both producer and distributor. That shift doesn't just unsettle competitors, it changes global medical supply chains. India's ability to produce pharmaceuticals at scale and at affordable rates gives it leverage in global health diplomacy. Competitors fear losing market share and political influence when India steps forward with both humanitarian support and commercial capability. In agricultural science, India has developed drought-resistant crop varieties, advanced irrigation methods, and data-driven farming techniques. These innovations are crucial not only for India's food security, but also for other nations facing climate challenges. As India exports agricultural technologies, it becomes a scientific influencer in regions where other powers once held dominance. Competitors recognize that scientific influence often leads to economic and political influence. When countries rely on India's agricultural solutions, they form deeper ties with India, shifting the geopolitical landscape. Renewable energy is another arena where India is surprising the world. Massive solar parks, wind farms, and green hydrogen projects are positioning India as a future leader in sustainable energy. Competitor nations that rely on fossil fuel influence or energy exports see India's green transition as a threat to their long-term economic stability. By reducing its dependence on imported fuel, India strengthens its strategic autonomy, and that shift unsettles nations that once believed India would always need their energy supplies. Furthermore, India's renewable innovations are cost-effective. which means other countries looking for cheaper green solutions may turn to India instead of traditional Western suppliers. In artificial intelligence, India's talent pool provides a unique competitive edge. The number of AI researchers, engineers, and developers emerging from India is staggering. Competitor nations realize that AI dominance will shape future economic and military power. With India's massive tech workforce and growing government support for AI development, traditional powers worry about losing their lead. When companies around the world recruit Indian AI talent or outsource AI development to India, it shifts the global center of technological gravity. India's achievements unsettle competitors not just because of success, but because of the mindset behind that success. India approaches scientific problems with a blend of frugality and creativity. This cost-effective innovation model is something that wealthier nations struggle to replicate. When a mission costs hundreds of millions elsewhere but only tens of millions in India, competitors cannot simply respond by spending more money. They must change their entire approach, rethink their strategies, and restructure their technological systems. That kind of disruption is deeply unsettling to nations accustomed to equating power with spending. Another reason competitors feel uneasy is India's demographic advantage. A young, educated workforce means India has a long runway of scientific productivity. Countries with aging populations face shortages of engineers, researchers, and innovators. India, however, is entering an era where millions of young people are joining the workforce with technical degrees, scientific training, and global exposure. Competitors can invest money, but they cannot manufacture population dynamics. They cannot replicate a nation of hundreds of millions of young scientists and engineers. That demographic reality gives India long-term scientific momentum that others envy but cannot replicate. India's scientific rise also affects global institutions and alliances. When India joins major agreements, contributes to global research projects, or participates in international scientific missions, it shifts the balance of influence. Nations that once shaped global standards without meaningful competition now face a strong, independent voice. India is assertive in shaping rules around space governance, satellite communication, intellectual property, data privacy, and digital sovereignty. Competitors worry that India's growing influence might challenge their traditional leadership roles. Another element that unsettles competitors is India's ability to learn quickly from mistakes and translate lessons into stronger future missions. Many nations treat scientific setbacks as national failures. India treats them as stepping stones. That resilience becomes intimidating because it means India's progress is not linear. It accelerates after every challenge. A country that responds to failure with more innovation is one that will eventually surpass nations that stagnate. There is also the issue of optics and narrative. For a long time, global powers maintained their influence by controlling narratives around progress and technology. India's successes disrupt those narratives. When a lower-cost, more efficient mission outperforms a high-budget Western mission, it undermines the assumption that excellence requires wealth. It inspires other developing nations to believe they too can enter scientific fields once thought unattainable. Competitors fear losing not just dominance, but also ideological control. India becoming a symbol of accessible innovation diminishes the mystique of traditional scientific superpowers. India's diaspora further amplifies its scientific influence. Millions of highly skilled Indians contribute to research labs, universities, space agencies, tech companies, and scientific institutions around the world. Competitor nations benefit from this talent, but they also recognize the long-term implications. The global presence of Indian scientists creates knowledge networks that strengthen India's own scientific ecosystem. Every Indian CEO in a global tech company, every Indian researcher in a leading lab, every Indian innovator in a foreign startup contributes indirectly to India's rise. Competitors see this network growing and understand that it enhances India's ability to compete on a global scale. Another reason India's rise unsettles competitors is the speed at which public and private sectors collaborate. India's scientific growth is fueled not only by government initiatives, but also by private companies, startups, academic institutions, and international partnerships. Space startups in India are designing rockets, developing propulsion systems, creating satellite constellations, and offering launch services. A dynamic private sector accelerates innovation far beyond what traditional state-controlled systems can achieve. Competitor nations whose space ecosystems are slow, bureaucratic, or reliant on legacy systems cannot keep up with the agility of India's emerging space economy. India's approach to technology is also highly adaptable. Instead of copying Western methods, India modifies and re-engineers solutions to fit local conditions. Whether it's building lighter spacecraft, designing modular systems, or developing hybrid engines, India emphasizes functionality and durability. Competitors find this unsettling because it means India's innovations are not constrained by predetermined models. A nation that can innovate from scratch with limited resources is capable of rewriting the rules of scientific competition. Furthermore, India's scientific ambitions are long-term, spanning decades rather than election cycles. This consistency enables large-scale planning. Nations with constantly shifting priorities cannot match the strategic longevity of India's scientific roadmap. When India announces future missions to the Moon, Mars, Venus, and beyond, competitors realize that India is not racing in a single event. It is running a marathon with unwavering focus. India's combination of discipline, efficiency, ambition, and creativity creates a scientific momentum that is rare in the world today. Competitor nations feel unsettled because they see a country rising without following the traditional pathways to scientific dominance. They see a nation succeeding without relying on massive spending, foreign technology, or external support. They see a country that treats innovation not as a luxury, but as a necessity. They see India stepping confidently into fields where only a few nations once stood. They see a country that is not intimidated by giants, a country that builds giants of its own. India's space and scientific achievements surpass expectations and unsettle competitors because they reveal a new reality. One where power is defined not by how much a nation spends, but by how intelligently it invests. Not by how loudly a nation speaks, but by how consistently it delivers. Not by how long a nation has dominated, but by how boldly another nation rises.